Hi, and welcome to Puppet Live. My name is James Pogren, and I'm a senior software engineer here at Puppet. In this session, I'm going to talk about remotely authoring Puppet manifests on target servers using the Puppet extension for Visual Studio Code. Now, this session is going to be slightly different. I'm going to do it mostly in one take and not really have very many notes, but this is bleeding edge software on the Puppet extension, and we're doing things that no one has ever done before. That may sound a little dramatic and excessive, but you can tell me after the session if I'm correct. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been in situations before where the workstation that I've been on and I had to develop Puppet manifests doesn't have the Puppet module installed that will be on the target server that I'm attempting to manage. Now, it could be locked down desktops where I can't install software, or it could be licensed modules that can only be installed on the Puppet server and can't be installed locally. Whatever the reason, we've all been there, blindly coding without any validation or feedback until it hits CI. Well, what if I could show you a way to get the same features and immediate feedback of local development, except on the remote server? Don't believe me? Well, we're going to use the Puppet language server to remotely develop on a target server without being on the target server. What's a remote Puppet language server, you may ask? Well, Visual Studio Code extensions come in two parts: the client that interacts with VS Code to present visually all the features you know and love, and the language server that integrates with the target language and provides all of the advanced features like IntelliSense. This language server is a separate process that runs in the background when your Puppet extension activates inside VS Code. Since it's a separate process, it can run anywhere, so long as there's a method to communicate with it. We're going to take advantage of that and provide a remote development experience locally. Let's take a look at an example. Here I'm sitting on a Windows 10 desktop. We can tell this because we can look at our facts in the manifest. This will be familiar to you if you've looked at the other Puppet Live session on the whistle-stop tour of VS Code. Now, I can continue here and blindly code, or I could use my remote Puppet language server in order to develop my manifest. First, I'm going to go over to my Ubuntu server and log in. And then I'm going to go over to the Puppet Editor Services folder that I've already copied to the server. Now, all of this is the checkout of this repo. We are currently working on ways to better install this on target servers and have this automatically packed up for you. But since this is bleeding edge software, we're doing things manually. So now we're in our directory here. We just have to start the language server. Well, since we know we have Puppet here, we can start our language server using Puppet. Now, why Puppet Agent, not PDK? Well, this is a server, so we're more than likely to have Puppet here than we are the PDK, but you could have used PDK if you wanted to. We'll start the language server using Ruby and pass several command line options to it. Now, all this means is that we're going to get the output on standard out. We're going to tell it never to time out and wait for the client, and don't stop when the client disconnects, and which port and IP address to use. So if we hit enter, we'll immediately start getting debug log information from Puppet, or from our Puppet language server. Starts really quickly, really fast, and we're on the server. Now, how are we doing that from locally over here? Remember, this VS Code window is only set to look locally. Well, we'll open up the settings window and make this a little bit larger. Then we'll search for Puppet settings, and then we will cheat a little bit and edit this in JSON and uncomment the settings that I already prepared here. It has the IP address that we used and the port. Now we can go back to our manifest and reload the window so that we reactivate our extension. You can see on the right hand side the Puppet language server is immediately connected to and starts processing our desktop over here. We get our indicator on the bottom here that is loading Puppet, and we can see the progress on the right. Now, you didn't have to start the language server with the debug logging on. This can be run headless. This could be running on a server at any point in time in any fashion. but we're doing this for demonstration purposes here. So now that we've loaded our Puppet language server, we have our indicator on the bottom what version we're running. We can double check that I'm honest here. We can look at the host name through our facts and see that we're definitely on our remote server here, and that we're not lying and masquerading an Ubuntu server here. So the point is, in our scenario here, that we want to manage a target server using modules that we don't have installed locally. So we can immediately start looking at what modules are installed on our target server by hitting Control space and seeing an IntelliSense list. And we see right away that we have Apache 2 modules. We didn't have those installed here locally, and now we are able to get the same information that we would if they were local, but because they're on the target server, they're not here. We also can page through and see lots of other resources that wouldn't be on a Windows install. Well, I hope you've liked the experimental feature here. As I said before, we're continuing to work on packaging and making this a more user-friendly deployment experience. But hopefully you can see what potential scenarios this can fulfill. Thanks for watching Puppetize Live.